Okay, so what's up guys? In today's video I'm gonna show you how to make beats for Travis Scott. Let's get right into it. If you're interested in Travis Scott samples, loops, I'm dropping brand new loop kit next Sunday, so don't miss out. Okay, so this is the final sample. The first sound that I used for his melody is this lo-fi synth called Arcana, and I layer down this chord progression. It's basically two chords. The first one is C sharp minor, but I shortened this note and made a suspended C sharp minor chord. I copied this chord and I pitched it down 5 semitones, and that's it. But I took these middle notes and I pitched them up an octave. And for the bass line, I started with the root note of the C sharp minor and then up 2 semitones to D sharp minor, then up 1 semitone to E, and then back to D sharp minor. This is the chord progression with no effects on. For the effects, I only used this equalizer to cut out all the low frequencies, and then I exported it. I opened it in the audio editor, and here I changed the format by right-clicking this audio file, and here in format, click edit properties, and I changed the sample rate to 10 kHz and click the resample. After changing its format, it sounds like this. As you can hear, it sounds a lot more vintage. Then I dragged this audio into the playlist, and for the effects here, I used the Shaper Box 2 with the volume module just to add a little bit of movement, but I turned the mix down to 70%, then equalizer to clean it up a little bit. Next, I used the Parasol to add a little bit of texture, then Fresh Air to boost mid frequencies and also high frequencies a little bit. Then I used this Chorus Gen 6 by Arturia to make it a little bit wider. I used this Mode 1 preset, but I switch the mono into stereo. Then I added this Valhalla vintage verb to make the sound a little bit softer and to put it a little bit to the background. I used this preset called Drum Air and I turned down the mix. Then I added this Mellow-Fi to make it sound even more vintage, and I only turned the mechanics down because it makes weird noises when it's too loud. Next, I used the FabFilter Pro L, which is a limiter, to make the sample louder, and on top of everything I added this Ozone 8 imager where I added these 3 bands so I can manipulate each range of frequencies separately. As you can see, the bass frequencies are completely in mono and the high frequencies are completely in stereo. And this is what the melody sounds like with all the effects on. Then I used Analog Lab again, this time with a classic synth pad called Bystanders, and I only copied the main chord progression. This is with no effects on. For the effects, I used the equalizer to clean it up again. Then I added this tremolator for movement. I used the default preset, but I changed the rhythm to 1/16th and I turned down the depth very little bit. Then I used this Valhalla vintage verb to put this sound more into the background, and to make it a little bit wider, I switched the color to 1980s. I turned up the low cut knob. I turned down pre-delay completely. I turned the decay down to 1.48 seconds and I turned the mix down to 40%. And on top of that, I added this S1 stereo imager to make this sound even more white. This is the melody with all the effects on. The next sound that I used is from Choir Essentials. I used this Women Performance preset and I layer on this simple melody. For the effects, I used the equalizer to clean it up a little bit. Next, I added Valhalla Shimmer for reverb with a very long tail to make it very ambient and to put it in the background. I turned up the low cut knob, turned down the size, turned down the diffusion and mix as well. Then I added another equalizer because the Shimmer added a little bit of low frequencies and I didn't want them. On top of that, I added this S1 stereo imager to put the sound more to the left side. This is the melody with all the effects on. Then I used another analog lab, this time with a synth lead called Prime, and this is what it sounds like with no effects on. For effects, I use the equalizer to clean it up a little bit, and the S1 stereo imager again, but this time to put the sound more to the right side. And the last sound that I edit is from Analog Lab again, and this time it's the hard bass called All Stops Out. And I layered on this bass line. For effects, I used the equalizer to cut out all the low frequencies below 30 Hz and to cut out a little bit of high frequencies as well. Then I added fresh air with a preset called Presence Pop to boost the mid frequencies and also the high frequencies. On top of that, I added this compressor called Compressor FET76 with the preset called Bass Finds Its Place. It basically squashes the whole bass. Then I used this Fruity Reverb 2 to make the sound a little bit softer and to make it a little bit ambient. But what I did is that I turned up this low cut knob. What this does is it sets the frequency below which the reverb won't be added. And then I turned up the size knob and the wet knob a little bit. And on top of that, I added Ozone 10 imager again. I added this imager because synth basses tend to be wide and to be very stereo, but I don't like that. So I always use the imager and I add the 4 bands, and I always put the low frequencies all the way down so it's completely in mono. Then I turn the low mids a little bit to mono as well, and then I make the high mids a bit stereo and highs completely stereo. This is the bass with all the effects on. When I had all the melodies done, I routed them all to the empty mixer track. What it basically does is that it routes all of these sounds to this mixer track, so I can add the effects to all of the sounds simultaneously. So first I added this tape Melofy. I turned the drive and tone knob all the way down. I turned up wear a little bit, and I turned down the mechanics. And I also turned up this filter knob a little bit. Then I added this equalizer to clean the whole melody up. I cut out all the low frequencies below 30 Hz and all the high frequencies above 23 kHz, and I reduced some of these frequencies. Then I added this virtual tape machines with a default preset, and on top of that I added this virtual mix rig with a preset called Mix Bus Fat. And this is what the final sample sounds like with all the effects on. As you can hear, I used a lot of analog sound because that's what you can hear in a lot of Travis's songs. Now, when the melody is ready, I am going to make a beat out of it. Okay, now the beat is ready. There are 2 things that I want to show you. The first one is the way I made these hi-hats. It's actually pretty simple. I just layered on this hi-hat pattern with a little bit of rolls, with a little bit of hi-hat rolls, and then I added this Effectrix with my own preset, which is just reverse right here and the reverb every other beat. And the second thing that I want to show you is how I made this intro.
Little mate.
The first thing that I did is I selected the area where a beat is the busiest. So it's the area where all of the sounds are playing, and I exported it by pressing Ctrl R. Then I imported the sound to the FL Studio. I routed it to an empty mixer track, and there I added this fruity laugh filter with a preset called 10 patterns with low pass filter. The next effect that I used is FX track with a mid press slapper preset, and then I added a shaper box, which is just a tape stop. And the last thing that I did here in this intro is that I made an automation clip of the tempo. It's very easy to mess this up, so the trick to not mess this up is to not touch anything when you make the automation clip. The first thing you do is that you copy the first point of this automation clip, and then you can do whatever you want, because it's very simple to move some points on the automation clip and not to get them right to the spot where they were. So now I made another point here, I pasted the value, then I made point at the end of the section where I want the BPM to be slow. I copied the same value, then I made another point right here and copied the value, another point right here and paste the value. And now the tempo will be the same throughout this whole intro, and then it gets back to the original tempo. And to make the intro even more interesting, I added this FX, which is just a tape start sound, and now it sounds like this. And that's it for today's video. So if you like this video, let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, follow me on IG, and like this video. And if you want some specific tutorial, just let me know down in the comments and I will do it for you. So I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.